What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Speaking Sessions podcast. Today, I want to talk to you about how to simplify complex things. This is a question that I've been asked by some of my clients about how do I simplify something that's complex? And complexity is really in the eye of the beholder. So, for me, being an engineer, things that are engineering related in the automotive industry are not that complicated for me because I've been around it. But for you, it probably will be. If you are a computer science person, you program things, you're going to think that's not that difficult to program. But other people that they're new to programming, or maybe they've never programmed at all, they're going to be completely confused by that. Even if you try and, so to say, dumb down the process, it's still going to be way over their heads. So, what do we do? Because we still have to explain this, especially if we are business owners, if we're leaders, we have to be able to explain what we want or what we need out of the people that work for us or the people that we are explaining this to in a way that they can understand it when maybe they're not in the weeds every single day. Maybe they don't know exactly, but you are trying to provide this service for them. And I want to give this analogy based on how I help my client. In this particular client, he has a CRM system where he actually goes through and creates custom built CRMs to help automate all sorts of stuff behind the scenes for you, that being his customer. So that way they basically get it set up and it just starts to work. But the problem that he was having was that he would start to try and explain things. And part of it was his, I'll call it nerdy side, where he's just really excited. He's really into this and he really knows it so much and wants to go and explain in all this detail. And if the client, which they're not into all those details, it's way over their heads. And so it's just way too much. And he was struggling with, how do I simplify this so they understand what it is that needs to be done and why we're going to be doing this a certain way. And of course, justifying the cost behind all of that too, which is the tough thing, because if you go and speak too high detailed, make it where it's complex, where only people that are also doing the work like you know, it's going to be hard for them to want to buy into that because they're confused. They don't know what to do. But then if you, let's say, make it their level, we dumb it down to where they can understand it. Now maybe you've oversimplified it, and now they think, you know what, I can just go do that myself, when that's not necessarily the case. So we have to find this balance where we're explaining in a way that they can understand this, but we're also letting them know that this is still a complex thing that they need our expertise on. So through this video, I hope to be able to share some of these insights with you. But just straight up, what you really need in order to be able to get somebody to understand that complex thing is by sharing stories and analogies with them. Yes, you want to explain, like, so if we're trying to automate a process, how do we automate a process? Well, okay, we automate the process of bringing a client in as a lead and nurturing them all the way until they finally become a customer and buy from us. Okay, sounds kind of cool in theory. Sounds like something that makes some sense, but when I go to start trying to, what does that look like? Oh man, that's so much. Okay, so what can I start to say? Well, we have inputs, which would be the lead, which would be well, really an output is the content you're putting out. But when you receive some interest from somebody, they input, they give you information, their contact information, maybe that's email, phone number, what it is that they wanted more information on. And based on that input, now we can start to put it through a workflow, which a workflow is a process of how the work is going to get done. Think of a river. The water only goes through a certain way. It can't just all of a sudden leap over the mountain or anything like that. It has to go down the river. And this is what a workflow is until we get an output, which is what's the next thing that we're going to do. So we received a lead from our website, landing page, whatever. We get this lead, we put it through the workflow. First step is send an email confirmation. Hey, Philip, thank you for reaching out to us or requesting more information. We'll get with you in the next couple of days. You send, and then another email. And so essentially what we're doing is talking about what this is. And notice I use this river analogy for workflow. So workflow, what in the world does workflow mean? Well, it's like a river. It has to go downstream. It has to start at one point and it's going to eventually end at another point. So when you get the lead in to when you finally make the customer, well, what are these things throughout this process that we want to do? And so that's what I worked with this client on, was help them be able to find ways to be able to talk about this. And so using that analogy of the river, you start at the top of the river where you're getting that lead, and the bottom of the river, or all the way to the right, left, right, whatever you want to say, of that river, the end of the stream is when it goes out to the ocean, let's say. But in this case, it'd be whenever we get our client, when we finally get them as a customer, win them over and deliver them our product or service. And so that workflow essentially is the steps between that where they go through. Let's think about the Mississippi River and all the states that it goes through throughout the United States until it finally goes into the ocean there. Make sure as you're telling these analogies, you make them go back and relate with the work that you're going to be doing. You don't want to just have some analogy that can't relate in any way, shape, or form, but you want to bring an analogy and a story in to help people understand this. And so the way we truly make complex things more simple is finding commonalities between what we're going to talk about and what the customer or prospect, what they know about. So if they are a financial wizard, perhaps we're going to try and find some financial analogies. If we don't really know too much about them, stick with things that you've already done, things that have worked before. But if you do know something about them, try and make it relatable with them. But bring those stories in order to help simplify those complex things. And so what I like to do is also think about, how would I write out a standard operating procedure? If I was going to teach somebody how to do this, how would I write that standard operating procedure out? So it's not about, okay, we get this lead, we put it in, we have 6 steps, and all of a sudden they're the customer. No, what does that look like? So we're going to put them in here into the CRM. We're going to capture their information, and there's going to be processes where we send emails, we send text follow-ups, we set an appointment with them. We really nurture that lead, get them warmed up to us, getting to know, like, and trust us. And once we get on that appointment, we'll identify the true needs that they have to make sure that we are a good fit for them, or you would be a good fit for them. And then finally, we'll go in for that sale. And so that's part of our sales process. And depending on what it is, it's going to be more or less complex. Maybe that's as complex as it's going to get for you. Maybe it's going to be more complex. But that's some of the things that we need to talk about. What is your current sales process, so on and so forth. And so this is what I did with my one client, is we really worked through that. And so even I had to ask questions. Hey, what does this mean? And let him explain that and everything. It's just, that's what you could do as well. So you don't necessarily have to hire me for that. Would love to help you out to be able to make things less complex for you and speak into more of a normal person terms, if you will, layman's terms and everything. But you can also just find friends and talk with them and say, hey, does this make sense to you when I explain it this way? So I would go about trying to write some kind of standard operating procedure, or find some stories that would relate with a particular audience, and then even ask friends. But you've really got to start practicing this, and not practice with those that are in the industry with you, because they're going to get that. They're going to have all that background information. So as you're explaining this complex product or service that you have, you need to make sure that you're explaining it in a way that somebody that has zero industry knowledge will be able to understand that. The stories and analogies are going to be your best way to be able to simplify a complex thing.